Another year comes another release in a major Ubisoft franchise. With Assassin's Creed taking the big long sleep this year, it's now time for Far Cry to once again step out onto the stage with Far Cry Primal. An interesting little game that actually just came out of absolutely nowhere, and well, here it is. And people have been a bit curious about it. Is it a proper Far Cry game, or is it a lot like Blood Dragon? Well, I can tell you now, it's a proper release. Well, Ubisoft are at least selling it as one, but does it really live up to that price? And, well, does it do anything different that the other Far Cry games didn't do? Well, let's find out, shall we? Far Cry Primal takes you all the way back to the year 10,000 BCE. You are Takar, a member of the Wenja tribe. After a mammoth hunt that goes wrong, which leaves pretty much all of your brethren dead, you go off to the land of Oros to seek your Wenja cousins. After meeting up with a gatherer named Selah, you decide to rebuild the Wenja tribe once more and unite them in the fight against the rival tribes, the Udam and the Izila. The story in Far Cry Primal is actually pretty good. The characters really kind of make this a good one. They're likable, they've got struggles, they've got great personalities. I actually really enjoyed a lot of the characters. I found some of them to be funny and some of them to be quite endearing. I actually liked hearing the plight of the Wenja tribe, and the other two tribes also were not all just black and white. They actually also had their own problems and their own struggles that actually made you kind of sympathize with them. It's actually surprisingly well written. However, the ending leaves a lot to be desired, and they even do a little after credits sequence which kind of gives you a ba-dun-dun-dun moment, but it really just doesn't, and you just go, that happened, and just dumps you back into the game. So overall, I enjoyed the story. It wasn't amazing, but I actually enjoyed it. I think this is better than the previous Far Cry games, because it actually, well, the story's quite good. Far Cry 3's story kind of fell apart towards the end. Far Cry 4's story wasn't really much of a story. So it's nice to see that Primal actually kind of goes in the right direction. So that's a good start, right? Right? Now we come to the gameplay. So let's start with the combat. There's kind of two prongs to the combat. You've got your ranged and your melee. Your ranged is your bow. You have a bow, you can upgrade it to kind of shoot faster, but yeah, you get a basic bow, and it works very similar to the bow you had in Far Cry 3 and the one you had in Far Cry 4. So if you played those games, you'll feel right at home here with the ranged combat. It still works really, really well. And as I said, you can craft better bows. You can even get a long bow that has better accuracy, and you can get a double bow which you can reload faster. So yeah, you can get better bows. But there's more of a focus on melee combat this time than in previous. Obviously now we're back in the Stone Age in this game, so there are no guns. So you use a lot of melee weapons. Well, you don't really use a lot. You have two melee weapons. You have your regular club and your two-handed club, which is a lot stronger, but it's a lot slower to use. The melee combat is as follows. You go up to an enemy and you hammer the attack button until the enemy falls dead or you fall dead. And that's basically how it works. There's no block button, there's no kind of special moves or anything. You can hold down the button to unleash a stronger attack. But other than that, that's the melee combat. Your weapons will break every now and again. You'll have to recraft them, but that's it. It's very basic, but they just about get away with it thanks to the very meaty feedback that you get from your controller and the great sound effects. So it's quite satisfying to actually bash a guy's skull in, so I can appreciate that. But I would have liked if the melee combat was a little more developed, or at least had a block button, because it really lacks without the block button. In order to dodge hits, you have to kind of move around them, and yeah, sometimes as well the hit detection can be a little off. I've had a few times where I've completely missed an enemy, even though I was aiming straight at him. Takar just decides to go right past him and aim pretty much at a tree. So yeah, that can be a little frustrating. Similar to previous Far Cry games, you can take over outposts and stuff like that, and obviously you can either choose to take them out stealthily, or you can go in and bash everyone to death. You get extra XP as per usual for going in stealthily. You mainly use your bow, and you can obviously, like in previous Far Cry games, go behind enemies and perform takedowns. There really isn't that much of a difference. It's still satisfying, I gotta admit, to go in and take over outposts without being seen. Instead of having the camera now to tag enemies, you can call in an owl, which will do sort of an area, which can give you a bit of an aerial recon over the area. It's a nice little change, but it still functions the same as the camera. You tag enemies with it. Though with the owl, you can set waypoints. You can drop certain bombs that you've made onto enemies. So it does. You do have a little more that you can do with the owl. So that's kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, the gameplay, there's a lot of it the same. You can now tame beasts. There are a lot of animals to be found all over the land of Oros, and you can tame some of them. How this usually goes is you craft some bait, and then when you find a beast, you throw the bait, and the beast will then be attracted by the bait. You then approach the beast, and then you hold the square button to tame the beast. And then, from that moment on, you can call on the beast, and you can get it to come with you to places, and you can use it to attack enemies. The great thing is you can also stealth with beasts. Each beast has its own specific stats. So certain beasts will have better speed, some will be more strong, some will be much better for stealth. So that's really cool. It's a neat little idea, and I really like it. You do grow a bit of an attachment to your beast, and you can pet it, which is a nice little touch. If your beast gets injured, you can feed him meat in order to recover health, and if he gets downed, it's quite heartbreaking, I must admit, when your beast is down and you've no more meat to heal him with, and you have to watch him slowly die. That's a bit heartbreaking, I have to admit. But thankfully, you can revive beasts that have died with red leaves. I wouldn't have been too much of an issue if it was permadeath, because you can always just get more by just crafting more bait and just attracting another. But yeah, it's nice that they do that. Now, hunting is still a major component of Far Cry Primal. Of course it is. It's set in the Stone Age. Hunting is quite important. You have to survive. So it still works the same. If you want to craft things, you need to find the right skins or the right materials. Yeah, that's fine. It worked in the previous games, it works fine here. The problem is, they gate a lot of the story content from you if you don't kind of do the hunting. Because basically, throughout the game, you'll find these specialists, and you bring them back to your village. Now, each specialist, you'll have to build a hut for them, which means you have to go out and get materials and skins. Some even require rare skins, and this can be very tedious. Now, it's fine at first, and the hunting is fun. It works exactly the same as it did in Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4. You can attack animals, and you can skin them. And also, you can now, with the new Hunter's Vision, it's easier to track animals. You can find rare animals. They kind of have certain smells that you kind of see, and if you've hit an animal, you can sort of see the blood. It's highlighted as they're leaking it. So there's some nice little touches, but it's very frustrating for certain that you have to build these certain huts, because it forces you to do the hunting, and it makes the hunting a chore, because you're then running around looking for this certain material when you just want to get on with the story. And it really kind of ruins the flow. There isn't much of a flow here, and to be honest, it's not really done because it's more done so that they can kind of make the game feel longer than it actually is. If they had if they didn't force you to build huts, I'm pretty sure you'd be done with the main campaign much faster. But even then, when I thought I'd finished the game. I thought I had done all the missions, and I had defeated the two major tribes. I thought, yes, I did it. I've won. No, I didn't, it turns out. It turns out I had to go build another hut in order to actually finish the game, which is stupid. I don't like that. It's not a very good... It's kind of ruined the hunting for me, because I just find the hunting now to be boring. Very boring. So that's a major problem I have with the game. And it feels a lot like Far Cry 4. I mean, as I said... It feels like you have the grappling hook from Far Cry 4 now in Far Cry Primal. They have a really contrived way of explaining how you get it, and it just feels strange having that in there. And instead of riding elephants, you can now ride mammoths, which I will admit is quite fun, and I do like. But still, it doesn't really... The things it does to differentiate itself from Far Cry 4 kind of makes it not very good. I mean, I like being able to build up the village, getting more population for my village. The more population and the more thresholds you pass, you get certain benefits. You get more resources for your reward stash, which is quite handy, because it gets you certain resources. But still, I just don't like having to build those huts. And some of the hut building is kind of pointless. It only just nets you XP and makes the hut look a little different, which is, again, as I said, pointless. So yeah, that's kind of really disappointing and kind of makes the game, as I said, a bit of a chore to play and a bit of a slog. But other than that, the game is fun. I gotta admit, despite the basic melee combat, I still enjoyed the game. I had a lot of fun. And, yeah, it's there's a lot of problems, but there's still a lot to like with the gameplay. So, that's kind of the gameplay in a nutshell. Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag, really. So let's just move on to what I think of the game's graphics. Like most of the other games in the series, Far Cry Primal runs on the Dunia engine, and my god, the game looks beautiful. Fantastic foliage, beautiful lighting, great textures, great character models, everything just looks amazing, and it runs at a very butter smooth 30 frames per second. I know this doesn't sound like a lot, but it's very solid, it never drops, so I can appreciate that. And yeah, the game looks absolutely gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, the game looks great. So what do I think of the sound? Sound-wise, the game sounds brilliantly. The music suits the game to a T, it's very atmospheric, and it gets quite... I just love how when the action really builds up, it gets quite intense. I love it. It's great. I love the soundtrack. The voice acting is absolutely brilliant. They got Elias Toufexis, who played Adam Jensen in Deus Ex Human Revolution. He does a fantastic job. I'm a big fan of the guy. I loved him in Deus Ex, and I've loved him in everything he's in. And he does another great job here, playing Takar. So overall, just the sound is great. Sound effects are brilliant. There's nothing wrong. The sound is absolutely perfect. But from Ubisoft, you do expect good sound, and this game doesn't disappoint. So it's time to now talk about bugs. In terms of bugs, I really didn't have too many issues with Far Cry Primal. I had a few weird instances. There was one time where an AI just kept walking into an object, but he eventually fixed himself and went back on his normal pathfinding route. I had a few instances where, like, certain things, like objects and characters would fall from the sky. That happened like once or twice, but other than that, no other bugs. Quests worked absolutely fine. It didn't have the game crash on me. The game's frame rate never dropped. So yeah, the game's pretty solid. I would say pretty solid. Now time to look at value for money. If you're worried about value for money, this game does give you plenty of content. The main campaign will take you about 10 to 11 hours to finish, and that's if you just focus on the main campaign and you don't really do any of the side stuff. Once you finish the game, and if you haven't touched the side stuff, there's loads of stuff to do. There's loads of locations to visit, loads of caves to find, collectibles to find, side missions to do for your village, and stuff like that. So there is a lot to do once you finish the game. So, in terms of value for money, I would say it's solid. It does just about reaches the price that it asks for. So I think it's decent value for money. And now time for the final conclusion. Overall, Far Cry Primal is a very, very fun but frustrating experience. I enjoyed my time with the game, and I'm gonna probably play more since there's tons of stuff to do once you finish the game. But the game just left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth with kind of just some of the way they kind of gated some of the content, and just how kind of similar the game feels to Far Cry 4. Now, I'm sure the developers put a lot of time into this game. I mean, it shows with the language they came up with just for the game and another area, but it makes me wish they'd have focused on certain areas. I wish they'd have spruced up the gameplay just a little bit more and taken advantage of that setting, but I still think the game is still worth playing at some point. So I'm going to give Far Cry Primal a 7 out of 10. And so that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you liked it, be sure to click the like button, maybe leave me a comment. I do enjoy getting feedback, and be sure to share this video around. So thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Take it easy.